have everyone just stay on mute, just for like background noise and things like that. What we are going to do, we're going to start off the time. We were actually sent some couple questions that people wanted answered. And so we're going to start with those. But at the end, we're going to kind of open up the chat if there's any extra questions. And so you guys can feel free to press on the chat button, and even I think scroll down to Marcy, and then you guys can send her the question, if that makes sense. If you guys don't know how to do that, just type the question in there and it will get to her regardless. But yes, so this is such a big topic. There's so many different avenues to talk about parenting and so many different things. So we're excited just to share our experience as us four women and how God has used us and has used parenting and our kids in our own lives. So I'm going to start off reading a verse from Isaiah, and I'm just going to pray for our time, and then we'll go from there. So Isaiah 40:11 says, "He tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in his arms and carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young." And I feel like that was a verse that was shared to me before I was a mama. And I feel like just the vision, the imagery of God being so gentle, that he gently leads not just our kids, he gently leads us. He gently leads those who have young. He is patient with us. He is tender with us. He is loving. He wants to guide us. And so I feel like just wanting to start off with that as the posture of God toward us mamas, when we feel like maybe our inner voice, like, or Satan attacking us, like, you should know better, you should be doing this better. And there's not a lot of encouragement, that God's voice says this. God's posture is this toward us, that he loves us, that he's wanting to cuddle us in his arms and lead us. So let's enter our time in prayer over that truth. God, I just want to thank you so much that, God, there are so many pressures. There are so many lies, God, that we can believe as moms. And God, that your word just stands true. That, God, your word says you gently lead those who have young. You gently instruct us, love us, challenge us. And so, God, I thank you that parenting is that portal for us, that we get to experience your hand in so many ways, God, that we get to lead our kids, but God, that we get to be parented by you. What a gift, what a hope. So God, would you just wrap your arms around us even now as we just engage in this topic, God? Would you make us tender? Would you make us, would you convict us? Would you do what you want to do, God, to refresh us and to lead us more toward your sweet arms and toward your face that is longing to be with us. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Okay, so we're gonna start off. The four of us are just gonna introduce ourselves and kind of share a little bit about ourselves, including like about our kids and kind of the dynamics that are there, their personalities and things like that, to kind of help give a feel. And I'll just kind of call on you guys because I know we're not in the same order, you know what I'm saying? So how about we start with Lindsay?
Hi, everybody. I'm Lindsay Cribbs, and I have two kids. Marshall is 7, and he is autistic, so that adds a layer of interest to our family. And then I have a 4-year-old. His name is Joey, and he does not have any disabilities that we're aware of. And I am pregnant with our 3rd, and I'm due in August.
Yes. Marcy, how about you?
All right. I brought visuals here with me because you need to see these guys. All right. So I am Marcy Asp. I started out at Bowling Green. So Isaac Zumba. And then we were in Amsterdam in the Netherlands for 10 years. So that's where I had a lot of my young child experience, my kids as they were young. And then about 8 years, we moved back to Kent State. So that's where we are now. And I have Core. This is Core. I can't see. Oh, there he is. Core. I don't know if you can see him. He is 13. He's in 8th grade. I have Olivia. Oh, no, no. And she is 16 and a junior. And I didn't have one of Elliot. That's terrible by himself, but this is from Christmas. They were being silly, but this is Elliot. He's 18 and he's a freshman at Kent State. And so I thought, I actually thought about Tiffany. You had a little one at the time. This was maybe 5 years ago. And one of her little ones was just learning to walk. And she had fallen over. And Elliot, who was probably 14-ish at the time, had seen that she had fallen over. And you could see his mind working. He's intellectual. He was playing. And so I remember he grabbed her little hand, kind of like it was a dirty diaper or something, and set her up on her feet and like backed off and was like, is she going to stay up? And she did. So he's very intellectual. He thinks about what to do and what's right and all this kind of thing, you know. And then a few minutes later, Core, who was maybe 9-ish at the time, 10, I see him and he's down in front of her, like doing a show and making her laugh and helping her, you know. And that's Core. He lives out of his emotions, and he's high and he's low, and God has made my kids so different. And Olivia is my steady, you know, in her head kind of plodding along. And so it's been so fun to see their different personalities develop and how God is using them. And so, yeah, I'm excited to talk with you more about my lovely children.
Yes, I love that example. That's super fun. Amy, I don't see you on my screen, but Amy, how about you go ahead?
Okay, well, I just joined. Sorry about that. I had some confusion. So can you remind me of what we're answering right now? Hello.
Yes. Yes, I'm so happy. This is such a privilege to have you here, Amy. Like,
Hi.
so excited to have you. So we are going around and just introducing ourselves, kind of like where we are in our season, but also just like our kids, like kind of explain the kind of the dynamics of our kids so people understand kind of who they are and how we have to parent them, kind of.
Okay. Yeah, so I am 52. And so I have, which is really crazy. I can't even believe how fast the time has gone. I have all adult children. In fact, they're on the wall. Maybe you can see them way up there. And actually, this is also crazy. They're all married. And so they all got married within 2.5 years. You know what happens when you birth your kids all in a 4-year period? They all do everything in a 4-year period. They all leave, they all get married, and now they're starting to have babies. And I'm just like, wait, okay, I need a week at least. Separate your babies by like a month or something. So anyway, my oldest son, Josh, is 27. He lives in Colorado with his wife. They went on the church plant that our church here, The Rock in Missouri, planted in Fort Collins. That's been a couple years ago. It's been really great for his life, and our relationship is really sweet. We have a great phone relationship, maybe better than if we lived together, actually. But it's been wonderful. He's done a good job just checking in on me and taking care of me. My daughter is 25. She's been married for 3 years. My son after that is 23. He lives here in my house with his wife and my grandbaby. So I'm actually grandma. My little grandson is almost 5 months old, and that's been so fun. And then my youngest son is in nursing school here at Mizzou, and he's married. He got married in September. So I'm not sure what else you guys shared. Is that good enough? Okay.
Yeah, that'd be good. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks. Yep.
Yeah, so for me, I have, well, so we started in Bowling Green, church planted to Kent State for the last, it was like for 10, 11 years. And then we came back to Bowling Green for the last almost 2 years now. So we've gone through quite a transition in that time. But my kiddos, so I have 4. I have Mason, who's just turned 11, Phoebe, who's 8, and Naomi, who's 5, and Nora, who just turned 3. And so I would say with Mason, He's definitely like the logical, likes to think through things. He's just like very level-headed. Like he can just think through things and like process it. We have really interesting conversations because we're very different. Like I'm very much like a feeling and I think through things that way. And he's very much logical. So we have a lot of this, but it brings a lot of like interesting conversations between the two of us. Phoebe is super creative and like a master of like fun planning. She just like is an explosion of ideas all the time. And it's just like the cutest and like best thing ever. It brings so much joy to our house. At the same time too, she also struggles with just anxiety and just being, just processing life. I think also with the move and with the pandemic, that's been a whole new thing too, just a lot of anxiety. And I think across the board, I've heard that from just a lot of parents, whether it's kids who normally struggle with anxiety or maybe kids who don't. That's just been a theme. And so we've been definitely processing those things. Naomi, she's 5. She is my helper. She is like a nurturer, but also very much a strong like leader. Like I will be listened to. And if you don't hear me, if I don't feel like you're listening, watch out. Like she demands to be heard. And I love that about her. And we're trying to shape that, if you know what I'm saying. Like we're like, we want that, let's try to shape it in this way. So she's so full of life and brings so much joy too. And then Nora, who's 3, she's definitely the loudest of all because I think she's the 4th. And she is going through the 3s. And I think that's really all I have to say to any mom who has gone through 3s, where it's like the independence, like they're trying to assert themselves. Just pray for me. And I'm not, no joke. Like, it's just like, pray for me in this season. I've gone through it 3 times, but man, it's still rough. It's still rough to feel like, okay, like I want to encourage this, but also, wow, you haven't used those words to me before or that tone of voice. And so we're kind of going through that with Nora, but she is like a bright, shining light, like in this family for sure. Like her dynamic of being the youngest, like softens my older 2. And it's just a really cool combination that they have together. So that's a little bit about our families. We're going to move into the next couple are the questions that like we had beforehand. We were sent a couple questions and we got to choose a couple that we wanted to answer. And so I'm going to start with Lindsay again. And how about you can answer one of the questions, or if you want to combine the 2, you can, but you can just start with one of them if you want.
Okay. Oops. I clicked the wrong thing here. So just choose one of the ones that I like signed up for, Tiffany.
Yeah, the ones that you signed up for. You can just choose whichever one you want to talk on first.
Okay. The first one that really resonated with me, someone asked, how do I control my child if they have a disability? And I think sometimes when we hear a question that we think doesn't relate to our children, it's really easy to think like, okay, wait, I'll just tune out because they're talking about something that doesn't relate to me. And the first thing I want to say is that my answer to this is really the same, regardless of whether your child has a disability or not. I think that a lot of the strategies that we use for kids with special needs really could work for just about anybody. So the first thing I'm going to say is that managing kids with and without disabilities really follows the same flow chart for me. We problem solve things with Joey the same way we problem solve with Marshall. That doesn't mean we use the same strategies, but the questions we ask ourselves are the same. So it's honestly just a really complicated question to answer, and so much of it depends on who the child is. So when I'm finished talking, I am going to put my contact information in the chat, just because I think the only way to really problem solve is by having like a one-on-one conversation, and there's just so many factors at play. So I'm going to put that in the chat, and I would welcome all of you to save my information just like as a backup, because I have had a lot of friends of moms with kids with special needs, or just friends of families who have reached out because they want to help, or they've reached out because they have questions. And I just think that it's an asset to think about those things and how we can help other people and come alongside them. So that's the long answer. The short answer would be to set manageable goals and then work on them one at a time. So I'll take Marshall as an example. So Marshall is autistic. He was diagnosed when he was 3, a few days before his 3rd birthday. I would say we knew he was on the spectrum long before that. So having a label isn't really necessary either. Like if your child has something that is a struggle, you don't have to wait for a label to look for a strategy either. So some of the things that Marshall has struggled with have been like sensory overload in big groups. He struggles with unknown situations. He struggles with loud noises. And so really controlling him or managing him has really depended on what situation we were working on. So city group or life groups were challenging for Marshall when he was younger. He would have a hard time like crossing the threshold into the house, just knowing that we were going from outside where it was quiet to inside where there were people and it was loud and it was unexpected. He didn't know if someone was going to greet him excitedly with a loud voice. That's what he always says because he doesn't like that. He doesn't want to tell people about the baby because he's afraid they'll react with a loud voice. So he has told no one that he's having another sibling. So, it just depends on what exactly the trigger is. So I would love to talk to whoever asked that one-on-one. And really, I would love to talk to anyone who has any questions, even if it's a question about like I personally am not offended by any question whatsoever. So like if you wanted to call me and say, what in the world does it mean when your kid does this? Or like, why does a kid with autism flap their arms? Or what am I supposed to do if like that? None of that is offensive to me. So I would love to talk to anyone who would have questions on that.
Thank you, Lindsay. That is so valuable. I know that's so needed and to hear from any mama and in our church. So God, I'm sorry, I was going to pray, but I'm not going to. So how about Marcy? Marcy, you do one of your questions.
Myself, there we go. Okay, so this one, which I love because I'm a practical resource person. And so it said, what did you or do you need in your mom toolkit to thrive? Like books, podcasts, one friend who, whatever. And I, a lot of the places we've been, I've been on the older end with kids. And so I love resources and people, a friend who like I would grab on to, like when we were in Amsterdam, there was a lady who had been a missionary there for quite some time, and her kids were quite a bit older than mine were, but she was godly. She didn't have a lot of time in her life. She had a really full schedule, but man, when I could sit and listen to her or hear from her or ask questions, I would just grab those times where I could. And so I encourage you, wherever you are in life, look for those around you who you admire, who have a good relationship with Jesus, and listen and study for yourself. But here are a few of the things that I have really, and I tried to, I've got pictures of some of the books because some of them I've loaned out and I don't have them right now. So a couple of things when my kids, I get this one a lot. I'm kind of famous for the sex resources in my circles. So this one starts with, this is called The Story of Me. I'm not very good. Why can't I hold it straight? There we go. Okay. And I have heard that I can send these and they'll get linked on the network website. So I will do that. And this one is by, let's see, I wrote it down, Stan and Brenna Jones, and they have a whole series as the kids get older, but this has been a resource, just this idea of let's, for our kids, we be the ones that set their worldview on sex and God's design for sex. And that one's really starts out really simple, like God takes a piece of the mom and a piece of the dad and he brings it together and it's this really cool thing. And then another resource that I'm really excited about is this is Julie Slattery, and it's called Rethinking Sexuality, God's Design and Why It Matters. And it's more of a like God's picture of sexuality. And so it's been really helpful as my kids have gotten older to be able to articulate God's design for sex. And so that's been really good. Another one when my kids were littler that I really liked, and like I said, I'll link these. And oh, I wanted to say, all of these resources, whatever resource you get, take it and filter it through the word, right? There's not everything in every bit of these that I might agree with, but man, always check it against the word and what God's word says. And it has to be right for you and your child. So I'm not by any means saying like, this is the thing, you should use this. So I wanted to say that. This one is called Respectful Kids by Todd Cartmel. This one is, like I said, I'm a practical person. He's a child psychologist, and he actually goes through and lists, he has conversations with kids, and he like gives the transcript of that, and was so helpful for me as a parent to have that. And one of the things I was remembering, because this is a ways back when my kids were littler, I was asking my husband, I was like, what was that thing we called, like, they had to say, okay, mom and dad, and then do it right away. And it was called fast listening. And man, we use that and practice that. And so there's some really great practicals in there. Another one is called, guys, I teach every morning on online. I don't know why I can't do this. It's different than how I usually do. Okay. It's called Raising Financially Confident Kids. It's as your kids get older, how to help them to know how to manage money. So all of our kids, I think starting in 7th or 6th grade, started getting their own salaries. They became Ask Family financial money managers. And so then they had to start learning how to keep a budget and that kind of stuff. That was super helpful. And anything else? Oh, for older kids, I love this book. It's called Growing With by Kara Powell and someone else, Stephen Argue. And it talks about the transition of how our roles transition as our kids become more independent. So we go from being their teachers with them in the classroom, helping them, being right there. We go to being a guide, which like, think about like a guide who sends somebody out in the woods, they give them some instructions and some key points, and then they go out away and they come back. And eventually we become the resourcers, which means a resource doesn't come to a person comes to a resource. So eventually we become more resources, and that looks different as your kids through, like, it's not all at once, but it's, in different things you go through this journey. And that's been super helpful for me as my kids get older. And then The Culture by Access Ministries. This is a free newsletter, The Culture Translator. Some of their stuff I really like, some of it, but they're really good at current events and how to explain those to their kids. I remember there was this one weird, scary lady. I can't remember what it was. Does anybody remember? Remember that? And kids were something about if you did something, you would die or something crazy. And I was like, and my youngest came home and talked about it. And so I went on there and they had something about it and explained it. And it was super helpful. So things like that, that's really helpful. And then there's last one. This one is called Sticky Faith. This is again, Kara Powell. She's a researcher, but it's talking about how do you, it says everyday ideas to build lasting faith in your kids. How do they take that kid with you, that faith with you, and not view it like a jacket they can take off and put on, but it's with them throughout everything that they do. So those are some of the resources, that I've really, that's been really helpful for me. Another from Julie Slattery, which is not exactly parenting. Sometimes it is, but it's Java with Julie. That's her podcast. It's awesome too. So I love resources. As you can tell, so back to you.
Yes, Marcy has been a wealth of resource to me so many times. Like the fast listening. Actually, you saying that reminds me, that's what I need to do with Nora more. Because it's like, I remember you telling me that with Mason, but now I'm like, oh yeah, I think that might be one of the keys of like helping me deal with the threes. So even you sharing that was a big deal. So anyway, that is So needed and so good. I wrote down so many of those. Thank you. Amy, do you want to go next?
I sure do. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I just love all these questions. I'm going to read some of these questions and try to answer them briefly because I could talk so long on them. You guys, I love being a mom. That is my favorite role. How did you do motherhood in a collegiate church? Church doesn't have many or any ministries for you or your children, not having older women ahead of you to learn from. How did you include your family into the mission of the church? And how did the collegiate students bless your family? Oh my gosh, so many, those are great. Let's see. I think it can be challenging for us. I've always been the oldest woman in our church every year. And maybe the only one with kids or the oldest kids or, you know, the most kids or whatever, I don't know. And so that's been challenging over the years, really. What do you do when your church doesn't have a childcare or those kind of things? And so just taking opportunities with the students and ask them to help out with the kids. And I'll tell you guys, one of the most important things for us with our kids, I just like get tearful whenever I say that all 4 of our kids are following the Lord. It's just such a blessing, you guys, because it's a scary time when your kids are in high school and they're going off to college or whatever the age is. And you just like, they're transitioning from you to God being God to them. He's not their parents' God, he's their God. And I don't know, I'm just so thankful. And I think that one of the biggest reasons that I think our kids are following the Lord, I mean, definitely because we led them, of course, and we had our home centered around God, but the college students loved on each one of my kids. You know, I thought one of my kids was a little quirky and, you know, just outside the box thinking a lot of times, and who's going to love him? You know, he's maybe just harder, just different or whatever. But there is somebody, there's several people for each one of our kids who love on them. And even the question, it blesses the college students so much because some of the college students don't connect with other adults. They want to just play with the kids, and there's not a lot of pressure to play with the kids. And they feel loved by our kids if our kids can't even talk, you know, or if all they're doing is playing Nerf guns or Legos. The college student feels so loved. And I think they're loved by the Lord through our kids. And that's such a blessing. It took me a while to figure out that my kids could bless the college students. Another thing too is to have older women. And a lot of times we don't have older women. Younger women have blessed me a ton. In fact, you guys, I have been in like a small group of women. There's 4 of us for about 3 years. And they're 21, 27, and 28. And I'm like, these are my closest girls. I love them. And they have blessed me so much. But also too, I have found different in the community who I've gotten to spend time with, and maybe somebody would be a mentor for me who's older and gone through life ahead of me. So those kind of things have been really helpful. And at first I felt bad, you know, going outside our church, but I wasn't going to another church. You know, I was meeting up with some other women that were in a similar stage of life as me or a little bit older. And that it really helped me a lot. But I mainly wanted to say that having the college students in our home and doing ministry together where our kids could see what was happening, we feel like that is the biggest reason that our kids are following the Lord. To do just our life. You know, we have different jobs and different vocations, and our husbands do, but when we can just do living life with the people that we're ministering to and do it together in our homes, or even if we take our kids with us somewhere and do it with them, it's just beautiful. And they can just see this is our life, not just our job or whatever. So those are a few of my thoughts. I'll stop. I'll make myself stop.
Oh, yes, that's so good. I can echo all of what you said, Amy. Very much so. Very, very much so. So for me, my question that someone posted was, what was a particular challenge for you on your motherhood journey? And what helped you the most? What have you learned? And what do you recommend to a mom who's in that? So I kind of went two different routes. The first one that I went to was comparison. Um, I think that was really a big struggle, like, and it still can be to some extent, but I think in the beginning, I think when everything was so new, just looking at whether it was like the moms around me or if like I would go onto like a blog or read someone's article, to be like, okay, so like to have like a really clean house or to stay on top of things or going out to eat. Okay, I don't know if we've done that in a while. Maybe I'm not being a fun enough mom, or am I doing enough crafts? Am I doing enough crafts? Or like, is it enough healthy stuff that we're eating? Or just like a lot of looking and not just like appreciating or even getting input, but like, oh my gosh, I'm missing something. Like I lack something as a person, as a mom. That was more of the thing. And I think that with comparison, it was just really good for me to reflect on this. Whoever asked this was really helpful. But it said, but I was thinking through it and I was like, it's a trap either way. So like if I'm comparing and I come out on top, if I feel like in that situation, I'm like, well, maybe I'm doing a little bit better. It's like pride is like rushing in and it's so all about me. And then it becomes a fear thing. Like, can I stay at the top? Can I outdo her again in this area? And then also a sin of like, I'm sinning against my like a sister who like God has loved, who has like given all these abilities to, but yet I'm thinking I'm better because I'm so insecure about not reaching a certain standard that I've made in my mind. You know what I mean? So there's that take. Or, which I feel like this is the typical way I think it comes out, is that I just come out lacking. And so I disregard the goodness of what God actually has for me. I just turn to like sin of like not trusting him with how he's made me. It's just like what I just mentioned about I don't do cooking very well or as well as her, so I can't cook at all. Like I must be really bad at being a mom, or I can't do this. And I think what has been really helpful is being able to zoom out on like these women's lives for me, because I think for instance, like someone who I feel like is super, like she's doing crafts with her kids a lot or lets them do like different art things. I look at her as a person and I'm like, she is so full of creativity and art. Like for her to do that with her kids is like an outlet. Like that is amazing. Like it's more about seeing who she is as a person and how God is like giving her in grace this outlet to love her family. And then through that, I get to actually get tips because I'm not minded in that way, but I get to get tips from her, not do it the way she does it, but to do it the way that like I can. Or looking at the mom who is like super organized and like I feel like has a tray for everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I wish I was like that. I wish my house looked like that. And man, if I had a little bit of that, maybe my house wouldn't be such a wreck in my own mind, or maybe I would be the best mom, and then maybe I could be on the cover of Good Housekeeping. I don't know. So like, it goes all these different places. So instead of being like, looking at it from like, oh my gosh, what am I lacking? I look at her and be like, wow, that helps her family function. She feels like she can live life because she has those different things. And that's a beautiful thing for her family. And then I also can get tips from her of how to like organize this wreck of a shoe closet that I have. Like, that's amazing. Like, I don't know how to do that the best way, but like, man, she has this great idea. I can use that. Do you see that like shift of perspective? I feel like it can go either way for me, honestly. Like there's times where I'm just like not doing well in the spirit and it will go toward like, like, what am I lacking? What am I doing? I'm doing awful, or she's awful. She's spending too much time doing that, instead of like, wow, no, God, like this is how you've made her. This is how you've made me. How can I be blessed by her? And how can I bless her with something else? So that was a big thing about comparison. Oh yeah, I wanted to end with that too, like to not view each other as a threat, but as like a resource. And I think that is a real word. Like when I feel like the Lord spoke that to me, like we are not a threat to each other, like to each other's identity, to each other's like personhood. We are not. Like our insecurity makes us think that way. Our pride makes us think that, but we are not a threat to each other. Like we are made to be like in unity and be like the body and have all these different blessings and talents and how they're supposed to work together. And so like, yes, I say that out to myself and I say that just to you guys too, just to have that vision. Anyway, so my second thing I was thinking of was discipline. I feel like in coming into motherhood, yeah, I feel like I honestly kind of figured discipline has to do with like just having control. Like I need to have control. So if my kid is out of control, they have to listen to me. They have to like I need to have control over their lives. And I think that that mentality like it did lead and can lead if I go into that path again, can lead to just a ton of anger, like a ton of anger because it's all about me. It's all about like, they need to follow my rules. They need to follow what I think makes me more comfortable. Like stop being so loud or like barking at them and instead of having a conversation about it or just different things where it's like being able to, being able to parent them without taking it so personal or having it be all about me. And instead having it be about their sin and like what's happening and connecting it to God and connecting it to like, how can they meet God in this space at a 3-year-old level, all the way to like an 11-year-old level that I have right currently. So like a good prompting question I feel like I think about often is like, is the way I'm disciplining right now, is it more about them seeing are they seeing more of the character of God in me? Or are they just seeing that mommy is really mad? Because I've had both. I've heard my kids say, I think I asked them, this was like a couple years ago, like, why do you think mommy disciplines you? Because you're really mad that I did that. And it wasn't like, well, you felt mad and then like, but I know I did something wrong. Or almost just like, it just felt like, no, mom was mad and that's why I was disciplined. And I'm like, not untrue, right? We can be mad. Like that's a natural reaction and we're human beings. But I think that was the main focal point for me. It was like, it's all about mommy's upset. You need to change your behavior. And so, yes, so I feel like this could be so much longer. But I think what has been really helpful to me is having it be, and this is from resources that I'll share at the end too, that I've learned a lot of this. This is not like Tiff has it all together. This is like a lot of people inputting into my life. This is not done perfectly, but like, for instance, the example I want to give is like Nora, let's say Nora, my 3-year-old bites Naomi, my 5-year-old. And then I send Nora to timeout, or what we call like you need to go calm down. You need to go sit and think about that. And then I go take care of Nene and her bite mark that's on her back. That's like all teeth on her back. And so I need to calm down because I've learned that too. I have seriously got to come down. Like, especially if one of my kids hurts each other. I don't know, this mama bear, even though it's my kids, it's like mama bear comes out and I just want to like protect. And so I need to calm down in order to like deal with the situation. And so then I go back to Nora and I ask her what happened. And it's like a progression of questions. Because something too I've learned is that like kids at like younger ages, they can't process why they did this, that led to this, that led to this. They just can see what happened like in that moment, but to be able to help them process like this led to this, then this led to this, then this led to this, helps them like actually problem solve and help them. And so, so anyway, I say to Nora, like, what happened? She goes, I bite Nay. And then I'm like, oh, how did that make Naomi feel? Oh, sad. Okay. And then what happened after that? I got put in timeout, and then I was like, okay, then what happened after that? And her being able to process like what happened in her 3-year-old way, she does it. Like she, with prompting, like can help. And then it leads to a place of like, I know what that's like. When I get mad, we want to sometimes do that. We want to hurt somebody when we're mad. but like God helps us find a new way, and God loves you so much, and like let's go say sorry for, and just like leading her in that way. And something too that I just learned this lingo with my kids, and I've seen like just really much a lot of value in it, is being able to say like, does mommy love you when you're mad? Yeah. Does mommy love you when you're sad? Does mommy love you when you're happy? And sometimes there'll be resistance if I've been on like my mom mad rate, like, where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm disciplining because I'm mad. Like sometimes they'll be like, yes, you love me when I'm mad, and I'm like, yeah, mommy was wrong, and having to apologize and be like, mommy, I should have taken a break and not yelled at you like that. Like, I'm really sorry for that. But being able just to, to do that, I think it's just been really something I've learned that has actually helped me feel like I'm more control of my emotion. Because sometimes I feel like they control how I feel, when I'm like, that's not how it needs to be. I can be in control of how I feel and be able to express that. So yeah, I think that's the main gist. And I
Tiff,
think
can I jump in and share
yeah.
something in addition to that?
Oh yeah,
Those things are so good because man, we don't always respond right. And Tiff, I just think you're so patient and just so sweet the way you speak to your kids and asking them, how did somebody else feel? That's so good. Or how did you feel? What led you to do that thing? One thing John and I did was we said that if the situation that happened became about us, like we are too worn out right now, our patience are gone, and when we're angry because they interrupted our day, the thing that their sin just made us have a problem, sometimes we would say that we forfeit the right to discipline them. We use spanking as some of the discipline at different seasons, at different times. But if we were mad, we said they got a freebie because we are not going to spank them when we're mad. We would have to do a different discipline, or we would say, we're really mad right now, we're not going to discipline you, you can just sit here for a little bit or something. Or the other parent, when they come home, if you can wait, or whatever the situation. But yeah, we're just too mad right now. We have to get with the Lord first before we can help take you to the Lord. So, but I just want to jump in. Tiff, thanks. Those are so many good thoughts.
no, thanks for adding all that, Amy. That's so good. And I think it comes back to like, we want our kids to not just have the right behavior, though that is nice. It's nice when they actually do the thing you want them to do, but like a transformation of the heart. Like, I don't want them to know like, mom's mad, say sorry, I'm done. But it's like, no, why did I bite? Like helping them process like transformation through the spirit of like, how can they choose a different way, and how can God shape this in their life, rather than how can I just change what I see, more change like the heart of our kid.
And do you have your kids have a verse? Like what verse does this situation need that can help us? Like one of the first verses our kids learned were, children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. And just some different verses. You guys, they can memorize verses when they can first talk. Some of us have done that, and it's so good. That another one of my things that I wanted to leave you with today, this isn't the right order of things, but since we're talking about it, is just that one of the biggest things in my kids' lives, I think, is that they memorized scripture from the time they were little, and different sections at different ages. But it was mostly all about what applied to their lives. There was a time we memorized, stop being mean, bad-tempered, and angry. Quarreling and harsh words should have no place in your lives. Instead, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgive one another as Christ forgave you. So it's real practical. And then when they were a little bit older, Psalm 139. And we just did it together. And that, I think that was just so vital for their little lives. And we know kids can learn languages really, really well when they're tiny and memorizing. And so same with scripture. Okay, thanks.
I know this like topic is so full. I love hearing input. It's just so needed and so good. Okay, we're gonna jump back to Lindsay for your other question.
Okay. The other question I signed up for, apparently, was how did parenting change your marriage relationships, and what advice do you have for that transition? Um, I mean, definitely parenting changes marriage and other relationships. One of the things I always tell people is like, I knew who Wes was I knew who he would be as a husband when we got married, but I had no idea what he would be like as a father. Cause let's be honest, like I didn't know what I would be like as a mother. So you truly don't know like what your natural tendencies will be as parents until you're in it. And so it's been really cool to see how like God uses our strengths and weaknesses together. And I'm sure that uh, that you could speak to that as well, Tiffany and Marcy and Amy. One of the things that I would say one of the biggest changes is that Wes is a reactive person and I am a proactive person. And again, those things can balance each other really nicely. But I'm a teacher. And so as a teacher, I think that I have this mindset of like what, you know, teaching and parenting kind of link hand in hand. And there are some pros and cons to that. I think I came in with some preconceived notions about like assumptions about what parenting would be like and assumed that Wes also knew those things, believed those things, and agreed with me on them. You know, like it's the air we breathe or something. And that's just not the case. And so we've just had to have so many conversations and come up with a plan like a team beforehand. And again, sometimes it has to be afterwards, like, oop, okay, we've encountered a problem. So now let's regroup and talk about what we're going to do. And I always feel like it's like two football coaches working together to like, you know, have a game plan. Okay. So I really love football and sports, but you on a football team and a coaching staff, you have a head, you know, you have a head coach and then you have an offensive coordinator and you have a defensive coordinator, you have all these people and it's the same game. They're all coaching, but they all have different roles. And they still have to agree. And so a lot of times Wes and I have conversations about how we want to handle things the next time it comes up. And then we have to agree to it. And then we both have to commit to doing the thing we said we do. And sometimes that's really hard because maybe we agree to do something that comes naturally for Wes, but not for me. So I'm fighting my own personality. Or maybe it's something that comes naturally to me and Wes has to kind of work against it. So we've also, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but the mentality we have in our household is that we are married and we are Wes and Lindsay. And then when we're talking about parenting, we are not Wes and Lindsay anymore, we're mom and dad. And so like we have to remove other things that might influence the way we view something or our emotions. Amy, I love that you talked about how sometimes you were disqualified from disciplining based on your own emotions. And I would agree with that. I think sometimes in conversations, Wes and I will disqualify ourselves from like a certain topic or like, okay, wait a minute. No, like I'm not Lindsay right now. You're not Wes right now. Like we're mom and dad and we're talking about the kids and agreeing on a game plan. So I think that in marriage for me personally, I think that it has changed our marriage because both of us have to put our pride aside like on a daily basis. And that is hard. Like I have to be able to recognize I have a strength in this area and I have a weakness in this area. And I need to defer to Wes in the areas where he has strengths and he has had to learn to defer to me in areas where I might have a little bit more information. Having a child with special needs complicates that also because it's not really a joke, but it's true. We always joke that like I am Marshall's case manager and that I hold all the things and that, you know, obviously Wes is his dad and he's great. And, you know, he does a great job, but because I was the person who attended all of the therapy appointments and goes to all the meetings and takes in all the information, like he has been okay with his role as somewhat deferring to me in that regard. Like when we sit down and talk about how do we want to handle the situation with Marshall, like I'll say, okay, well, you know, these are the things the therapist said, this is what we've been doing, this is how I think we should handle it. And that was hard, that can be hard for him too, because he has to rely on me to bring that information to the table. So I would just say it's probably different for everyone, but just knowing that you're going to have to like work through and talk through things you never thought you'd have to talk about, down to the detail. So that has definitely changed our marriage. I would say in a good way, it has strengthened our marriage because we've had to improve our communication and we've had to problem solve. I always tell people that I think that Wes and I actually do better when we're like busy and there are like things to tackle. It's almost those seasons where things are quiet and calm where we're like, oh, okay, now what? So that's one thing. And I think there was a thing about relationships in there too. I just want to say that that for me, it has changed my relationships because I've had to open my eyes to who is naturally connecting with my kids, and how can I continue to foster that and learn from the ways that they might naturally do something really well. So I know we've talked about like discipline and management and that sort of thing a lot. I just think it's so interwoven into everything about parenting. But for example, like one of my good friends, Heather, is like she's just so good with kids. And so like I've watched her for years, we taught together. I've watched her for years be able to handle these situations just like with these natural inclinations. And I've learned a lot from her. So even in parenting, like, okay, I'm the mom, but sometimes we'll be together and she'll handle something. I'm like, ooh, okay, like, what'd you do there? And like, how should we do that differently? And like, talk to me about that. Like, just Tiffany, you kind of touched on this too, like rather than viewing it as a threat, like just open your eyes a little bit to like, maybe somebody's better than you at something. And how can you like beg, borrow, and steal what they're doing to benefit your own kids? So.
Lindsay, can I share a quick story about what you were just saying? That's
Absolutely.
so good. You guys, when we were newly married and we had 4 little kids, we asked, well, fairly newly married, 7 years. We had one of the pastor's kids come and babysit our kids. And he was from a home of 7 or 8 kids. And he was like 20 or something. And when John and I left the house, we were like, oh my gosh, he knows way more about parenting than we do. We got to learn from this kid, And so it's so true. We do need the community around us. We do need people. We need to offer for people to speak into how to parent because they come from a different home or a different situation, or they have some ideas or something. And we care about our kids so much that we can be humble and let somebody else speak into, maybe you guys want to consider doing it this way next time. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. You're right. Thank you. We need each other. And sometimes we have to humble ourselves and go ask people to speak in, or they just won't, because it's a risk for someone to tell us how to raise our kids, Mama bear, like Tiffany was saying. Thanks.
Yes, we need each other, don't we? Humble us, Jesus. We need each other. So we have about 8 minutes until the 5-minute timer is going to go off. So we'll have maybe do 1 or 2 more questions. So Marcy, can you answer your second question?
Yep. And I want to reiterate, man, what you guys are sharing is so good. I'm like over here, my head's like a bobblehead. I'm nodding along. Oh, I put it in the chat box. Let's see, I'll send it. This was, I don't think I'll have time to get to this one, but this one was about obeying dad more than obeying mom. Somebody had asked that question. And I think we learned from this is super practical, not as much heart, but sometimes we need our kids to obey and we need them to. So we trained our kids with that and we use this. And so that's that resource from one of the books I said, but he wrote an article and it's free online. So one of the questions, or several of the questions, were about how do we live in the world but not be of the world? When do we know to put our kids out there with people who believe differently than we do and think differently than we do? And when do we mama bear? I've told this to Tiffany and Lindsay before, like batten down the hatches, man the walls, bring them in. We're not letting them out. Like there are times when that mama bear comes out and I'm like, don't mess with my kid, like, and what they believe. But I wanted to share just a couple of things. So I think in general, Eric and I, our approach has been, we will gradually let them out into things, but we want to be in dialogue with them about what they're encountering and what beliefs and that kind of thing. But that's harder to do sometimes than to say. And so I wanted to give a couple examples. One time was when Elliot was in preschool. We were living in Amsterdam, which is post-Christian society, but he really needed to start learning the language. He was like 3.5. And so we started him in preschool and he was terrified. He was crying every day. I was talking to the Lord going like, are we making the right decision? I don't know, Lord, are we doing the right thing? And he had a teacher who was an atheist and we had kind of started dialoguing with her. And I thought, oh gosh, Lord, I'm sending my 3.5-year-old into the arms of an atheist. Like, I don't know. And he would be, like I said, he would be super scared. And so one day she shared with us, she said, you know, when he gets scared, he starts singing a song. And so I'd ask him about later, and the Lord is my light and I can start crying about it right now, guys, and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold in my life. Whom shall I fear? And that really impacted her and it impacted him. He prayed for
Hey, Marcy, you got
Mevrouw
frozen up. I think you're back now.
Okay. Where did I cut out?
Probably the end of the verse, I think.
Okay. Yeah. He would sing this song and it really impacted Mevrouw was her name. And he prayed for Mevrouw for years that she might come to know Jesus. And he was only there a short time, but I'm like, man, if I would have been like, nope, like that wouldn't. And so we don't, each situation is different. You have to seek the Lord, but sometimes he works in ways that you don't really expect. Another time, Elliot was in 7th grade and his teacher, am I still okay? Okay. His teacher was sharing this philosophy about the way, and basically you become your own God. If you put things out into the universe, you can kind of control things and make good things come to you. And like, I wanted to go to her and be like, what are you teaching my 7th grader? But we had a great conversation about it. And he said, Mom, I think I want to try this. Like, I want to. And I was like, we talked through about being your own God. And that's really what that's saying is that you can control the universe and different things. And I really just wanted to be Mama Bear and shut things down and be like, you will not. But I said, I want you to talk to the Lord about it. And here's what Dad and I believe. And so he came back to me the next day. He's like, Mom, I was praying and you're right. Like that's, and he came to it on his own, so sometimes them experience those things in the world and getting to come back and dialogue with you about it is a really great thing. One thing that we have kind of pulled back, do way differently than the world, is social media and phones. We've waited a long time. We waited until our kids, we said when they were 16, they could get some kind of social media. And I've wrestled with the Lord on that because culturally that is just against culture. But I think for our family, that has been really beneficial. And we see our dentist is so funny. Every time we come in, he's like, your kids, the conversations I have with them, like the way, and I'm like, Lord, I know that's part of it, is that, and a blessing from college students that they talk with college students all the time. There are the challenges, but there are so many blessings that come with it too. Yeah.
Yes, Marcy. Yes. Oh man. Okay. We're getting close on time. I think maybe we'll just go ahead and start. We wanted to end our time with just like the top thing that we would want to pass on to you. The top thing we think is like of much value. And it probably entails some of the things we've already said, but each of us are going to kind of just communicate that, and also any other resource that we think has been beneficial to us. And like you said, Marcy, maybe we'll put links to those, or is that what?
Yeah, I'll work on that.
Yeah, we can do that. So how about Lindsay, do you want to start us with what you want to leave us with?
Sure. I would say that for me, I wish that I would have started parenting a little more open-handedly and not and so concerned that every decision I made was going to screw things up. So just being open-handed and viewing everything through the lens of the gospel, that would be my advice.
Yes. How about you, Amy?
That's so good. You guys are awesome. I was thinking that I knew as we were married longer and longer, it was a scary time possibly when your kids are leaving home and you have to, you know, you're focused on your kids a lot. And when they start leaving home, you look at your husband and you're like, well, what do we have in common? What do we want to do together? And maybe not as much for us as Christians, and we're trying to love our spouses, and we do really love each other. And sometimes some other couples we can see just they're not working together. They're not preferring one another or whatever. But I just remember feeling like because John and I planned a weekly date night, we already knew each other. We knew who each other was. And when our kids started leaving home and we have more time together, what do we want to do? It wasn't a scary thing. It was an exciting thing. And I just want to say our kids are entering into our marriage. And if we can put our marriage first and have a weekly date night, even if we don't get to have a weekly date night, but it's on the calendar and we can get it a couple times, it's really important.
So good. I think we have like a little over 30 seconds, right? Let's see. Marcy, do you have something you want to leave with them?
I was just gonna say Luke 6:40, it says, a student is not above his teacher, but everyone fully trained will be like his teacher. And that always gets me, right? Not what we say, but what we model, what we do, our relationship with the Lord. We're not going to be perfect. So if we want them to model forgiveness and grace and mercy and all those good things, do it.
Yes. And one last thing, the best thing you can give your kids is you having time with Jesus. Okay.
Thank you.